Exodus. We left off with the Israelites in Goshen being hosted by the Egyptians, and they grew in number. Now Joseph and all his brothers and all that generation died, but the Israelites were exceedingly fruitful. Then a king who knew nothing about Joseph came, and he started oppressing the Israelites because there were so many. He thought that they would overtake him and take over Egypt. So he put them into forced labor, and he decided that every boy that is born will be killed. It is in that setting that Moses is born. His mother tries to protect him. 3 months he stays with him, but could no longer do so. So he put him in a basket and laid him in the Nile. The sister followed through to see where the baby would go. And Pharaoh's daughter saw him, and she decided to adopt the boy. The sister then requested her to find someone to nurse the baby, and she called their mother. How wonderful that Moses would be raised by his own mother, but as Pharaoh's daughter adopted son. One day when he's grown, he kills an Egyptian who was fighting with an Israelite, and eventually he was found out and the king was after him, so he decided to flee. So he went and he met Zipporah, who became the wife, and they got children. So now the Lord spoke to him while he was in Egypt. He was there with Zipporah and the family that he will save Egypt. The Lord spoke to him through a burning bush, and the Israelites were slaves. So he went back to Egypt to talk to the Pharaoh who had hardened his heart. And so there were plagues to try to soften him, one after another, from the Nile to the frogs, to the gnats, to the flies, to the livestock dying, to the birds, to the hail, to the locusts, to the darkness, to the firstborns dying. So the Egyptians' firstborns died, then the Israelites' firstborns were consecrated, Israel led by a pillar of cloud out of that place and also a fire. So Pharaoh realized what he had done, and he again wanted to pursue the Israelites and to enslave them once again. The Israelites were saved by God when they went through the sea on dry ground. The Egyptians drowned in the same sea as they were trying to get to the Israelites. So the Israelites crossed over, and they were in that land being fed by the Lord with manna. For 40 years they stayed in the wilderness, and that's how the Lord fed them and provided water for them from a rock. Jethro heard that Moses was around, and he took Zipporah and the children to him. Then Jethro saw that Moses was overwhelming himself and advised him to delegate work to people, to some elders. And Moses did so. He also met with God at Mount Sinai, and the 10 Commandments were given. The men feared the Lord. So the laws of property were given, the laws of justice, all kinds of laws were given, and the Lord also instructed them on how the tabernacle was to be built. From the ark to the table, to the lampstand, to the tabernacle, the altar, and the burnt offering, the courtyard, and the oil, the lampstand. Even the priestly garments and how they were to be consecrated were also described to Moses. And so Oholiab and Bezalel were craftsmen who God gave the skill to do all this work. So they did all this work even as the Lord had described it. And so there's a command to leave Sinai, and the laws are repeated all over again. And Moses tells the people the work of the Lord is to be done, and the work of the Lord is done. And Moses gave the command that people should no longer bring more stuff because the material for the building was already enough, and so the work would be sufficiently done, and even more would be done beyond what was given. And so after the work was done, Moses had inspected it, and he saw that it was according to how the Lord had prescribed it. And so he also consecrated the priests, that will be Aaron and his sons, and they were consecrated for the priestly work, because now the altar and everything in the sanctuary was ready. And it is in that time that the Lord's presence came. The cloud covered their tent, and Moses could not enter there. But from then on, that cloud directed the Israelites when to set out. So every time the cloud moved, the Israelites set out. And we will see more of that even as we read Leviticus, Numbers, Deuteronomy as we go on. Blessings.